All set? All right. Good morning. Thank you for joining us here at Stony Brook University Hospital for what is a celebration of this police family here in Suffolk County, as one of our hero officers is released from the hospital today, Officer Timothy Thrane, to continue his recovery. And we are feeling blessed today, grateful today, grateful to Officer Thrain for his service, and grateful to the incredible team here at Stony Brook University Hospital for the work that they do. I'm joined by a number of my colleagues here, some of whom will be saying a few words in just a moment. I want to recognize them. First, of course, we have the acting police commissioner and longtime chief of the Suffolk County Police Department, who does an incredible job. I want to thank him, Stuart Cameron. We are also joined by our outstanding Deputy Commissioner, Risco Mention-Lewis. We're here, of course, with Suffolk PVA President Noel DiGirolamo. I want to thank him for all that he does in support of these amazing officers in the Suffolk County Police Department, and he's going to be saying a few words in just a moment as well. We're also joined from the PVA by Trustee C.J. Hutter, who will be speaking as well. And of course, I want to acknowledge, as I mentioned, the incredible team here at Stony Brook University Hospital that is led by the Division of Trauma, Emergency Surgery, and Surgery Critical Care Director, Dr. James Voswinkle. Dr. Voswinkle is simply amazing. I think there's no other way to say this. And I thanked him just before, and of course, as he always does, he said, "This is what we're here for anytime." And I said, unfortunately, it is the case. We have been here before, but every time that we have been here, the care that our officers, and we know that everyone receives here, but the care that our officers have received here is world class and has without question saved lives. And so I want to thank Dr. Voswinkle. I want to thank all of the doctors and nurses here at Stony Brook Hospital, this incredible team. They are heroes to us and so many other families across this region for what they do, and certainly what they've done during COVID. And I want to recognize, of course, the CEO of Stony Brook University Hospital, Carol Gomes, who is here with us as well. Carol, thank you so much for your incredible leadership and for what wonderful things that happen in the worst of circumstances in this hospital. And speaking of individuals who we have been here with before, I'm in my end of my 10th year as county executive, and unfortunately I have been in this position before, coming to this hospital after our officers have been seriously injured. But I've also been in this position where we are celebrating our officer recovering from life-threatening injuries to be able to come back and recover. And we're joined today by some of our officers who have experienced just that, suffering from life-threatening injuries, coming here to Stony Brook University Hospital, and their lives being saved here within these walls. And that is an incredible thing. And these officers and detectives, they are heroes in our community. I was proud and thankful and grateful the days they were released from this hospital, and they're here now with their fellow officer to celebrate his release and to really show that you can come out of here on the road to recovery and make that recovery and come back to the department and continue your heroic career, and that's exactly what they have done. And again, we are so grateful to them for their service and for their example. We are joined by Police Officer Mark Collins. Mark, thank you very much for your incredible service in the police department. Detective Christopher Rasiopo. Thank you, Detective. And Detective Nick Guerrero. Detective, thank you. And I had to say a note about Detective Guerrero. When he came out of this hospital and on the road to recovery, we began a marathon, and I have to say, I was quite shocked when I began running when he passed me in the marathons. I didn't want to admit that today, but I felt like I should. It's great to see you, all of you. Officer Thrain will come out of the hospital today after suffering these traumatic, life-threatening injuries. You'll hear about those in more detail. But what this shows once again is that these officers who are doing this work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are constantly putting themselves at risk for all of us. They are putting themselves, their safety, the interests of their family on the line to protect and serve all of us in this county. And Officer Thrane, in doing that and in providing that selfless service, suffered that what we know is a risk every time you put that uniform on, and grievous life-threatening injuries that he sustained. And Dr. Voswinkle will talk about how close this was. But he's coming out of the hospital today, and we are very hopeful, and we are hopeful that he is making a full recovery, and he will be back with us in the Suffolk County Police Department, back on duty, like these officers and detectives who came before him as well. So with that, I want to turn it over to our acting Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Stuart Cameron, to say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to the PBA President, Noel DiGirolamo. Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. I'm often criticized when I do press conferences that I'm not smiling. Well, I'm smiling today. Today is a great day for the Suffolk County Police Department, and really today is a great day for all of Suffolk County. Unfortunately, yet again, we came very, very close to losing one of our police officers during a horrific incident. Police Officer Tim Thrane was grievously injured by a drunk driver over 1 month ago today, and he's been hospitalized since that day. But today he's taking a big step forward to what I believe and I hope will be a complete recovery. Tim spent a large portion of his time here at Stony Brook in critical condition, literally fighting for his life every day. This incident highlights the inherent dangers in our profession and why we must continue to work to eradicate drunk and impaired driving from our roadways. I want to sincerely thank Stony Brook University Hospital personally and on behalf of our entire police department. I saw firsthand the incredible care that Tim Thrane got while he was here. I also need to specifically thank Dr. James Voswinkle, our medical director and chief consulting surgeon, who directly oversaw the care that Tim received while he was here, which led to this successful outcome. Jim and I spoke every day, and at times Jim rarely left Tim's side. We are so grateful for the care that Tim received while he was here. Today, as the county executive said, we are joined by other officers who were seriously injured in the line of duty in the past, and thanks to the great care they received here at Stony Brook, all have returned to work. Detective Nicholas Guerrero, who suffered a serious head injury when a fleeing suspect ran him down with an automobile in September of 2014. Nick is back to work in our criminal intelligence section. Police Officer Mark Collins, who was shot in the line of duty in March of 2015 and is now back to work in our emergency service section. Detective Christopher Rasiopo, who was stabbed in the leg in April of this year and is now back to work in our criminal intelligence section. We will also hope to be joined by Police Officer Christian Vidal, whose patrol car was struck head-on in our 3rd precinct in September of 2013. He had returned to work in our medical evaluation section, but Christian still continues to suffer from the injuries that he received, which highlights that although these officers are back to work, their lives will never be quite the same as they would have been had these grievous injuries not occurred to them. These three officers are here today to support Tim Thrane and vividly demonstrate to him that you can recover from these life-threatening injuries and return to work. In closing, I want to acknowledge what a traumatic ordeal this has been for Tim Thrane's family, who never left his side. When there's a police officer in your family, you get used to missing a lot of holidays together and get used to an irregular schedule, but you never get used to the constant concern that when they leave their house, that you're worried that they might not return home safely. Tim's children haven't seen him since the accident. He was able to FaceTime with them once they came out of the coma, but Tim will be reunited with his children today. He has a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So you can only imagine how difficult that was for them, that their dad has been gone for a month and they really couldn't understand what happened to him. So I'd like to now introduce our PBA president, Noel DiGirolamo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Obviously, I had to pull the mic down a little bit. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. As always, I have to thank the county executive for his leadership and continued support of our police department and all law enforcement in Suffolk County. It's something that we were missing for a very long time, and we are all very grateful for everything that you do for us on a regular basis. Thank you, Steve. Obviously, the continued support from our department, Commissioner Cameron, Commissioner mentioned Lewis, Deputy Commissioner mentioned Lewis. Thank you so much for everything. As was said already, and I'll echo it, what Officer Thrain has done and what sacrifice he has made is another example of the inherent dangers that law enforcement faces every single day. And unfortunately, a lot of times police officers and other members of law enforcement are being vilified in our current climate. But all you have to do is look right now at the other officers standing here with them, Nick, and Chris, and Mark, and unfortunately Christian couldn't be here. That's what police officers do. That's the risk they take. They know that when they accept this vocation, I don't call it a profession, it's a vocation, we're called to it. And what you have to remember is that the sacrifices that they are willing to make on a daily basis is for people they have never met. That's what defines them. And if you look right behind us here and you see hundreds of police officers standing there, each and every one of those individuals right now would be willing to lay down their life for people they've never met to keep our county and our community safe. And in particular, let's look at the people standing there in the gray uniforms, our brand new recruits who just came on to this job. Especially in this climate, I want to thank each and every one of you for accepting this, stepping forward, and joining the ranks of the greatest department in our nation. Of course, if not by the grace of God, and of course the medical expertise of Dr. Voswinkle and the entire staff at Stony Brook Hospital, we would have had a different outcome from this tragedy. But very grateful that that did not happen. Dr. Voss, I can never thank you enough for all you've done. Saved 5 of my officers in the last 7 years. Undoubtedly, it would not have been the same had they received care somewhere else. Thank you, Doc. And with that, I'm going to pass this off to my trustee, C.J. Hutter, who's a personal friend and Tim's trustee.
Thank you, Noel. Just want to talk a little bit about the person that Tim Thrane is. When I met Tim Thrane, and over the past couple of years, he's spoken numerous times about the pride he takes in being a Suffolk County police officer and the pride he has in policing the area where he grew up and where his family's being raised. Tim's been a model cop ever since he graduated the academy. He's been a mentor to any new police officers that have followed, and he's been a calming force in some way that his co-workers look to, especially during heavy calls and high-stress situations. But what I really want to focus on is Tim Thrane, the family man. Tim Thrane talks about his family constantly. I would see him in the precinct. We talk about stuff we do with our families, and he speaks about his wife Janelle and his 3 children often. He would talk about doing things like going out to local farms, playing in the yard with his kids' soccer tournaments, just anything you could do with his family and spending time with his children. And that's really the type of person Tim is. He's the kind of guy that really cares for the people around him. the last couple of days since Tim woke up, he's been talking about, his kids, and he can't wait to give them a hug and a kiss. And I'm looking forward to seeing Tim reunited with his children here today. And on that note, I'd like to introduce Dr. James Voswinkle. He'll talk a little bit more about what Tim's going to go through.
Good morning. Today's just not a great day, it's an exuberant day. I appreciate all the kind words that they mentioned about myself, but it really was a true team that saved Tim's life. It started at the scene. This happened right on William Floyd Parkway, right near the 7th Precinct. His fellow officers are all trained as EMTs, were there to provide immediate aid. Additionally, some of the medical crisis action team, trained law enforcement paramedics, immediately rendered aid. Subsequently, I want to thank our tremendous volunteer EMS agency. When Ridge Fire Department, their emergency medical service, showed up immediately, and then aviation with trained paramedics got to the scene. From the time that Tim was hurt, he was here at Stony Brook within 30 minutes. Assessed, resuscitated, and brought to us. I cannot underestimate how important that is when someone sustains injuries. And the injuries that Tim had were life-threatening and extensive. As soon as Tim got hit, he fractured his skull. As I mentioned earlier to the media, he had what's called an epidural hematoma. Essentially, an artery was ripped on the inside of his skull. We've heard of celebrities that have passed away from this. We've heard of many people. It is truly a time-sensitive injury. As that artery starts pumping under the pressure of the heart, rapidly and quickly, blood expands into the brain. As that blood is expanding, if it's not evacuated, not only do you get permanent brain damage, but patients unfortunately pass away very quickly. So if it wasn't for what happened at the scene, the identification, the treatment of that incredible team there that day, bringing him here, we wouldn't have Tim. Secondly, when he got here, fortunately, because of our emergency department, our nurses, all my colleagues, we were able to identify the injury. I was immediately able to call Dr. Michael Egnam from the neurosurgery service, and his physician assistant, Brian Borowski, who assisted in the operation, was here. He went to the operating room, and they were able to literally open his skull up, stop the bleeding, and evacuate the blood to save Tim's life. Shortly after that, as we ascertained other injuries, he broke his humerus, which is the bone in his upper arm. He ripped all the ligaments in his neck. He broke his hand, and he ripped the ligaments in his knee, which really shows the impact that this drunk driver hitting the other vehicle, as the vehicle swung around and hit him, really the injuries he sustained. Unfortunately, shortly after that, there's something called systemic inflammatory response syndrome, where inflammation occurs in the body from the pure magnitude of that trauma. And Tim became, once again, very, very critically ill. He sustained something called acute lung injury, which led to ARDS, which is adult respiratory distress syndrome, where essentially his body's immune system attacked his lungs, and it was extremely difficult to oxygenate and ventilate him. There were about 3 or 4 times when we failed our conventional treatment and we had to use rescue therapies to actually keep oxygen in his body. Throughout this entire time, his family was at his bedside. His extended family here were around. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they couldn't be literally at his bedside, but they were around every minute. There were texts going on. The amount of prayers that were said for Tim were incredible. I also had to do a tracheostomy on Tim because of his lungs. So when I used the word exuberant, I wasn't underestimating that. When we were finally 3.5 weeks into the 4.5 weeks he's here, finally able, that his lungs healed enough to get him off the vent, it was, Tim woke up, and Tim was there. Tim was Tim. He was there. It was great. So, because of everything that preceded that, the care on the scene, our incredible neurosurgeons, the nurses, the physical therapist thereafter, the occupational therapist, the respiratory therapist. There's so many people that I'm not going to be able to mention here. But the team that treated Tim, Tim is still Tim. Tim is going to be able to go to St. Charles Rehabilitation today. As you can imagine, his body is extremely debilitated, not just from the fractures and the ligament injuries, but from laying in a bed for 4.5 weeks, going through that inflammation and stress. He has FaceTimed his children. He will be going through inpatient rehabilitation, hopefully, and I know Tim now, he will be home for Christmas with his family, which is, once again, it's very hard to describe the emotions I'm feeling by saying that. So today, once again, to end things up, it's an exuberant day. Thank you.
Any questions? All right. Well, we're going to go get him. Yeah.
Go get him. Yeah. I'm sorry?
What is his recovery going to be like?
Tim, not only because of the fractures and the ligamentous injury, the ligaments that were torn, there's going to be a lot of suffering and pain, unfortunately, he's going to have to go through. He is going to have to regain muscles to be able to walk, to be able to feed himself. He's completely Tim. He's completely neurologically intact, but his body's not there. Just from the inflammation and stress of what had to go through, he's got a road ahead of him. But as I told him, he's going to be home with his family. He's going to be a dad. He's going to be a husband, and he's going to be a police officer again. So it's the most positive outcome there can be. But he still has a lot of work ahead of him.
Can he talk?
He can talk, and Tim is Tim. Tim, as I said, Tim is there. One of the things he was worried about is that he wouldn't be him. He go, did my personality change? I go, you seem like a good guy. If you were a bad guy, it changed good. But no. Tim, he's 100% there. It's absolutely incredible.
CJ said he talks.
Any other medical questions, guys?
It sounded like it was pretty touch and go for a while. Do you maintain that confidence, or do you have any concern that he might not make it?
I had a lot of concern he wasn't going to make it. Prayer for Tim, prayer from everyone here, prayer from the county, prayer that everything would go the right way. Thank you.
Thank you.